The expedition is at 18,000 feet. The sun is a pale, weak disk behind a veil of frozen mist. Ahead of them lies the Gloom, a pass that isn't on any modern map. Will Prescott is in the lead, his breath coming in steady, disciplined plumes. He stops, checking the tension on the safety line connecting him to Mina. He looks back at her, his eyes narrowed against the glare. The barometer is dropping faster than I'd like, Vance. If we don't hit the cave mouth in 20 minutes, we're going to be breathing ice. Behind them, Edgar is struggling, his expensive Gore-Tex gear rustling as he stumbles. He lets out a sharp, arrogant laugh. Relax, Sergeant. I've consulted the ancient texts. The gate only opens for those with the spirit to see it. My intuition says it's just over that ridge. I can feel the energy. It's practically vibrating. Will doesn't even look at Edgar. He keeps his gaze fixed on Mina. He's looking for her signal. He trusts her discernment more than Edgar's vibrations. The wind howls through a narrow gap in the granite, a sound like a freight train screaming across the ice. Mina feels the burn in her quads, a welcome fire against the numbing cold. She adjusts her pack, her gloved hand instinctively checking the carabiner on her harness. She doesn't need to look at it. She feels the mechanical click through the fabric. She ignores Edgar's talk of energy and focuses on the reality of the mountain. Above them, a massive cornice of blue ice hangs precariously, looking like the frozen teeth of a giant. Will signals for a halt. He points toward the ledge they have to traverse. It's barely a foot wide, coated in verglas, that thin, transparent layer of ice that makes rock as slick as a greased mirror. I'm going first to set the anchors, Will says, his voice gravelly over the wind. He looks at the drop-off to their left, a 3,000-foot plunge into a white abyss. Mina, I need you on the belay. If I slip, don't try to hold me with your arms. Use the brake and drop your centre of gravity. You're the anchor. Edgar scoffs, trying to hide the fact that his knees are shaking. A bit dramatic, isn't it? My guide in the Alps always said, "Your guide in the Alps wasn't standing on the edge of the world, Edgar." Will cuts him off, his eyes never leaving Mina's. He's waiting for her nod. He's trusting her with his life on this traverse. Mina doesn't waste breath on a reply. She's already in the zone. She slides her hand down the rope, feeling for any fraying or stiffness, her eyes scanning the rock face ahead. She sees the line Will is planning to take, a narrow vertical crack that leads to a small frosted shelf. It's the only logical path, but it's brutal. She plants her boots, finding a stable pocket in the granite, and drops her centre of gravity, just like she's done 100 times before on training peaks from the Tetons to the Andes. She wraps the rope through the belay device, the mechanical clack-clack of the gear sounding sharp in the thin air. She gives the rope a sharp tug, testing the tension. Satisfied, she looks up at Will. She doesn't just nod, she gives him a look of total steady focus. It's the professional's handshake. She's signalled that she has him, no matter what happens on that ledge. Will sees it, and his shoulders relax just a fraction of an inch. He knows he doesn't have to worry about the anchor. He turns to the wall, his crampons biting into the verglas with a sickening scree sound. "Going up?" he grunts. He makes the first move, a wide reach to a jagged hold. But as he shifts his weight, a chunk of the ledge, weakened by the Gloom's freeze-thaw cycle, suddenly shears off. A dinner plate-sized piece of granite whistles past Mina's head, plunging into the white mist below. Will's left boot slips. He's hanging by 3 fingers and the tension of the rope. "Will!" Edgar shrieks, stumbling back and nearly tripping over the safety line. When the ledge shears away, the rope doesn't just pull, it snaps taut with the force of a whip. Mina feels the harness bite into her hips, the weight of Will's 200-pound frame trying to yank her off her feet, but she's already braced. Her mountain boots, heavy-soled and steel-shanked, are jammed into a crevice in the rock. She leans back into the harness, using her entire body as a counterweight. Her forearms cord with muscle as she locks the brake, the rope groaning under the sudden friction. For a heartbeat, it's just her against the gravity of the mountain. She holds. The line stays steady. Will is dangling, his boots scraping for purchase against the slick granite. Once she feels the tension stabilize and she knows she's got him held fast, she turns her head just enough to glare at Edgar. Edgar is pale, his boots tangling in the slack of the safety line as he fumbles to find his balance. "Edgar, watch your feet!" Mina's voice cuts through the wind like a crack of a whip. No fear, just pure authoritative command. Step back from the line and stay low. If you trip over this rope again, you're going over the side with him. Do you understand me? Edgar freezes, his mouth hanging open. He's never heard that tone from her before. He scampers back toward the rock wall, crouching like a frightened rabbit. Mina turns her focus back to the rope, her voice dropping an octave as she speaks to the man hanging over the abyss. "I've got you, Will. Reset your feet. There's a solid nub of granite 2 inches to your right. Find it." Will doesn't panic. He hangs there for a heartbeat, his heart hammering against his ribs, but his mind is already cycling through the SOS of his military survival training. Situation, options, solution. He looks up, his eyes meeting Mina's. In that split second, they both see the same thing, a narrow diagonal seam in the rock that had been hidden by a shadow. It's the only way back up. Without a word, they reach the same conclusion. "The seam, Will," Mina says, her voice a calm anchor in the wind. "On it," he grunts. He swings his right leg, catching the toe of his boot in that tiny fissure. With a grunt of pure physical effort, he hauls himself upward, his muscles straining against the sub-zero air. He clears the lip of the broken ledge and rolls onto the solid rock, chest heaving. He stays there for a second, face down against the cold stone, letting the adrenaline subside. Then he pushes himself up and looks at Mina. It's the gaze. He doesn't offer a thank you or a sentimental speech. He just looks at her, eyes locked, jaw set, with a deep, heavy nod of respect. It's the look of a soldier who knows his partner just held the line when the world tried to fall apart. It's foxhole trust. Edgar, meanwhile, is still huddled against the rock, his breathing shallow and frantic. That was too close. We should turn back. This is an omen. The spirits of the mountain are... Will stands up, his shadow falling over Edgar, effectively silencing him. He doesn't look at Edgar. He keeps his eyes on Mina as he unclips from the lead rope to reset the anchors. "We're not turning back," Will says, his voice like iron. He looks at Mina again, a small, barely visible spark of something more than professionalism in his eyes. "You still good to lead, Vance?" Mina unhooks the belay, her movements fluid and practiced. She doesn't have a bead of sweat on her, despite the 200-pound catch she just made. She shakes out her arms, the vibrant energy in her limbs making the cold feel like a secondary concern. She catches Will's gaze, that heavy, silent foxhole look, and offers a small, confident smirk. It's the look of someone who knows exactly what she's worth. "I'm always good to lead, Will," she says, her voice steady. "And I don't need omens to tell me which way is up. I just need a solid anchor and for Edgar to keep his feet clear of my gear." She shoots a pointed look at Edgar, who is busy dusting off his designer parka and trying to regain his dignity. He hasn't started talking about profitability yet. He's just annoyed that the mountain didn't move for him. "Right," Edgar mutters, checking his GPS, which is flickering wildly. "My equipment is glitching. This altitude must be interfering with the satellite uplink. But the map clearly shows the entrance should be just behind this outcropping." Will motions for Mina to take point. He trusts her eyes more than Edgar's blinking screen. As Mina rounds the jagged edge of the granite wall, the wind suddenly drops. The screaming gale vanishes, replaced by a silence so thick it feels heavy in the ears. Ahead of them isn't just a cave. It's a massive arched opening that looks less like a natural formation and more like it was carved by a giant's chisel. But it's the light that's wrong. Even though the sun is behind them, a faint warmth pulsing is emanating from deep within the passage. This is the gloom they were warned about. the place where the physical laws of the Himalayas start to bend. Visually, there is only a jagged, irregular split in the mountain face. It looks completely unremarkable, just more grey rock and frozen shale. But as Mina moves her head, the perspective shifts. The entrance doesn't look like a hole, it looks like a tear in the world. The interior of the cave isn't just dark, it's a flat, matte black that seems to swallow the dim Himalayan sun. There are no shadows inside because there is no light to cast them. "Well," Edgar says, stepping up behind her and sounding disappointed. "It's a hole. A very dark, very dirty hole." "Are you sure the coordinates were correct, Vance? This looks like a place for goats, not a gateway to a lost civilization." Will moves up to Mina's shoulder, his hand resting instinctively on the strap of his pack. He clicks on his high-lumen tactical light and aims the beam into the opening. The light should have bounced off the back wall or illuminated the dust motes in the air. Instead, the beam seems to travel for a few feet and then simply vanish. It doesn't hit anything. It doesn't fade. It just stops, as if the darkness itself is hungry. Will frowns, shaking the light slightly as if it were a battery issue. "The air is moving," he says quietly, his voice low. "There's a draft coming from deep inside, but I've never seen a cave swallow a 5,000 lumen beam like that." Mina steps closer to the threshold. She doesn't feel a mystic pull, but she feels the temperature increases another 10 degrees. The silence from within the cave is different from the silence of the peaks. Out here, the silence is empty. In there, the silence feels full. Mina reaches into a side pocket of her tactical vest and pulls out a high-intensity chemical glow stick. With a sharp, practiced snap, she breaks the inner vial. The tube instantly floods with a neon-green radiance, casting a sharp, artificial light against the grey rock of the entrance. "Tech can fail," she says quietly, her voice a calm contrast to the wind. "Chemistry doesn't." She tosses the stick forward. It tumbles through the air, a spinning arc of green light that crosses the threshold into the cave. The moment the stick enters that blacker-than-black space, the light doesn't illuminate the walls. Instead, it looks like a lone green star floating in a void. It hits the ground about 15 feet in, a soft clack echoing back, and just sits there. It reveals a floor of smooth, dark basalt, but the light doesn't travel more than a few inches beyond the stick itself. It's as if the darkness is a physical weight pressing down on the glow. The ceiling is high, Mina observes, her eyes tracking the way the light failed to reach the top. And the floor is dry, no ice, no slickness. She looks back at Will. She sees him checking his own gear, his jaw tight. He doesn't like things he can't explain with a manual, but he trusts her. Then she glances at Edgar, who is standing just outside the line of the cave, looking like he's waiting for someone to lay down a red carpet. "Edgar, if you're coming, stay behind Will," Mina says, her tone neutral but firm. "And keep your hands off the walls. We don't know the stability of the mineral deposits in here." She steps over the threshold. The transition is instant. The howling wind of the Himalayas is cut off as if a door has been slammed shut. The air inside is unnaturally still and strangely warm. Before Mina's foot slips into void, Will's military training kicks in. He uses his body as a mechanical lever. Will is already wearing his tactical harness. The moment he sees the floor shearing away, he doesn't lunge blindly. He drops his weight into a tripod stance on the stable part of the rock. As Mina slides, he fires out his left arm, snagging the heavy-duty reinforced handle on the back of her tactical vest. The drag handle designed for pulling wounded soldiers out of fire zones. The weight hits him like a sledgehammer. 400 pounds of combined momentum tries to yank him into the hole. But here is where his experience shows. He has already slammed his heavy steel-toed mountain boot into a natural V-shaped crack in the basalt floor. He uses his leg, the strongest muscle in the human body, to take the brunt of the weight. His right hand isn't just fingers in a crack. He's jammed the thick serrated head of his tactical ice axe. which was already in his hand for the climb, into a deep fissure in the wall. The metal teeth of the axe bite into the stone, creating a mechanical anchor. Ugh! Will lets out a guttural growl, his bicep bulging against the sleeve of his jacket as he holds her suspended. His body is a human bridge between the ice axe in the wall and the heavy boot wedged in the floor. He isn't just holding her, he's pinned against the rock, his teeth bared in a grimace of pure physical exertion. Mina! He barks, his voice strained. Left hand, grab my harness. I can't pull you up solo without the floor shearing more. You have to climb me. He is literally acting as a ladder. He's stable for now, but the rock beneath his lead boot is starting to groan under the 400-pound pressure. Will is a statue of strained muscle, his ice axe groaning in the rock fissure as Mina starts to haul herself up. Her hand finds the sturdy webbing of his shoulder strap. She's moving with the precision of a cat, careful not to jar his position. Almost. There, she breathes, her face inches from his. Their eyes lock, a moment of intense, shared survival. Then there's Edgar. He's standing on the stable ground, but his panic has reached a fever pitch. The gloom is pressing in, and the sight of Mina dangling over a void has snapped his last thread of composure. He thinks the floor beneath him is going next. We have to get away from the edge, Edgar screams. Instead of moving carefully, he lunges forward, trying to grab onto Will's rucksack to pull himself safe. But he's clumsy. His heavy boot catches the safety line that's still coiled on the floor, snagging it around his ankle. As he lunges, he doesn't pull himself to safety. He becomes a 200-pound wrecking ball. He slams into Will's side. The ice axe, already stressed to the breaking point, screams as the metal teeth shear through the basalt. Will's wedged boot is kicked loose by Edgar's flailing legs. Will! Mina shouts, but her voice is swallowed by the sound of the ledge finally disintegrating. For a split second, they are suspended in the warm, dark air. Will doesn't let go of her vest. Even as they lose gravity, his arm tightens, pulling her into his chest. He twists his body in mid-air, a soldier's reflex, trying to put himself beneath her to take the impact of whatever is at the bottom. Edgar is a mess of flailing limbs and muffled shouts, still tangled in the rope, dragging them all down. They fall into the blacker-than-black vacuum. But it's not a short drop. The air isn't cold, it's humid and thick. The screaming wind of the Himalayas vanishes, replaced by a low, rhythmic hum that vibrates in their very bones. They aren't hitting rocks. They are sliding down a massive, smooth incline of what feels like polished glass, accelerating into the heart of the mountain. The slide ends not with a bone-shaking thud, but with a long, cushioned hiss as they tumble onto a thick carpet of bioluminescent moss. The impact is soft, like falling into a bed of damp velvet, but the air is thick with the scent of crushed ferns and ancient loamy earth. Mina gasps, her lungs fighting for air in the sudden humidity. She is sprawled across Will's chest. He had kept his grip on her the whole way down, his body acting as a shield. Will, she whispers, pushing herself up. I'm okay, he grunts, though his voice is strained. He's already reaching for his sidearm, the soldier in him never taking a break. Edgar, report. A few yards away, a pile of ferns rustles. Edgar groans, untangling himself from the safety rope. I'm alive. No thanks to this death trap. Where are we? Why is it so hot? Mina stands, her vibrant energy returning as she takes in their surroundings. They are at the bottom of a massive sinkhole. High above, a tiny pinprick of grey light marks the hole they fell through, but down here the world is draped in a dim emerald twilight. Massive, rope-like vines hang from the ceiling like frozen snakes, and leaves the size of car hoods shield the valley floor. Then the silence is broken. It wasn't a bird or the wind. It was the sound of shifting stone, rocks gliding together in a rhythmic clack, slick. A hollow growl vibrated through the air, carrying a metallic, grinding quality as if the beast were carved from the mountain itself. The trio could feel its mass. Every weighty step through the undergrowth sounded heavy, deliberate, and entirely unnatural. Will is on his feet in a second, his tactical light cutting a path through the ferns. He aims it toward the sound, but the beam hits a wall of thick, pulsating vines that seem to move on their own. The growl gets louder, closer, coming from the shadows just beyond their sight. "Mina, get behind me," Will orders, his thumb flicking the safety on his pistol. "Edgar, shut up and move." Edgar is frozen, his eyes wide as he stares into the dark greenery. What is that? That's not a leopard. That's a demon. Just as the brush begins to part and a massive shadowy claw, jagged as obsidian, reaches into the light, a new sound cuts through the tension. A sharp, rhythmic whistle. "Quietly now," a calm, weathered voice calls out from the shadows to their right. "If you wish to keep your limbs, you will stop shining that false sun into the Kage-Tora's eyes. Follow the path of the white lilies. Quickly!" A figure shrouded in grey, woven fabric steps partially into view. They aren't looking at the monster. They are looking at Mina. There is a sense of recognition in the stranger's eyes, as if they've been waiting for someone with her specific wisdom to fall from the sky. The stranger's whistle acts like a conductor's baton, but the Kage-Tora doesn't retreat. Instead, the growl deepens into a rhythmic, wet, chugging sound. Will's tactical light catches a glimpse of the creature's flank as it moves through the brush. It isn't fur. It's a shifting, overlapping series of plates that look like wet slate. It's huge, larger than any Siberian tiger, and the sheer presence of it sucks the air out of the clearing. Will's hand is steady on his sidearm, but his eyes are wide. He's been in foreign jungles before, pinned in the sights of a leopard. But that was an animal of flesh and blood. This thing is massive. Looking at those shifting plates, he knows that if it lunges, lead won't be enough to stop it. "Mina," Will says, his voice tight and low, never taking his eyes off the shifting shadows. "We go. Now." He doesn't even look at the stranger yet. He just knows that anything is better than staying in the kill zone of the Kage-Tora. Mina nods, her own instincts screaming. She grabs the back of Edgar's jacket, hauling the frozen man toward the path of white lilies. The flowers are strange. They don't just grow. They seem to pulse with a faint, milky light, creating a glowing trail through the emerald muck. The stranger turns and vanishes into a wall of hanging moss. "Wait!" Edgar gasps, his boots slipping on the bioluminescent moss. "We don't know who that is. We don't know where—" "Move, Edgar!" Will barks, stepping backward to cover their retreat, his pistol still aimed at the spot where the slate-coloured plates had vanished into the ferns. They scramble into the mossy tunnel. The moment they cross the line of white lilies, the air changes. The heavy predatory musk of the creature vanishes, replaced by the scent of jasmine and cool running water. The stranger is waiting for them in a small grotto, lit by a single shaft of light from above. Now that they are closer, Mina can see the details. The grey fabric isn't cloth at all, but a finely woven mesh of silvered grass. The stranger is a woman, her face etched with lines of age and wisdom, her eyes a startling clear amber. She looks at Will's gun with a faint, pitying smile, then turns her gaze to Mina. "The metal in your hand will only call the shadows closer, soldier," the woman says to Will, though she keeps her eyes on Mina. The Kage-Tora does not fear fire or lead. It only fears the light that is held with a quiet heart. She steps closer to Mina, ignoring the mud and the chaos of their arrival. "You have the scent of the high places on you, daughter of the word. But you are far from home. Why have you come to the Valley of Shadows?" The amber-eyed woman is still looking at Mina, waiting for an answer, but the silence is shattered by the sound of Edgar brushing the moss off his expensive sleeves. He stands up straight, adjusts his collar, and clears his throat with a loud, forced authority. "All right, that's enough of the riddles," Edgar says, stepping between Mina and the stranger. He tries to tower over the woman, putting on his executive director persona. I am Edgar Saint-Claire, head of the expedition. I represent several major international stakeholders. We have travelled a very long way under great duress to reach these coordinates. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled, mud-stained piece of paper. The map, he thinks, gives him power. You're a local? Fine. We need food, a secure location, and an immediate audience with whoever is in charge of this valley. There will be a significant reward for your cooperation, of course. My family doesn't forget its friends. Will lets out a low, disbelieving snort, his hand still on his pistol grip. He looks at Mina with a, "Can you believe this guy?" expression. The stranger doesn't move. She doesn't even look at the paper Edgar is waving. She simply continues to look at Mina, her expression moving from curiosity to a faint, amused pity. He speaks of stakeholders and rewards, the woman says softly, her voice carrying over Edgar's bluster. He carries a map of the skin of the mountain, yet he is blind to the heart of it. They stand at the edge of the plaza, the gloom held back by the steady rhythmic pulse of the star metal. The Kage-Tora is there, a massive slate-plated shape at the periphery, but it isn't attacking. It's sitting back on its haunches, its milky eyes fixed on Edgar like a judge watching a defendant. It is the living embodiment of the mountain's scrutiny. Edgar steps toward the iridescent ore. He doesn't reach for it yet. He just gazes into its depths, his face illuminated by a swirl of violet and gold. "I will give thee the treasures of darkness," Edgar whispers, his voice smooth and terrifyingly certain, "and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which call thee by thy name." He looks at Mina, a faint cold smile on his lips. He used a pagan king to rebuild the temple, Mina. Why wouldn't he use a Saint-Claire to power the next century? "Edgar, don't," Mina warns, her voice low. "Cyrus was humbled before he was used. You're just greedy." The woman in the silver grass robe steps between them, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. The Kage-Tora waits because the heart has not yet acted. Come away from the heart. Come and see what the silence builds before you decide to break it. She leads them away from the pulsing pedestal and down a staircase carved into the living pearl stone. As they descend, the gloom vanishes completely. They enter a residential tier of the city. It's a home. There are no doors, only arches draped in flowering vines. Mina sees children, healthy, vibrant, with skin that seems to hold a faint glow, playing a game with smooth river stones that hum when they touch. There is no shouting, no noise of machinery, just the sound of water and the low, melodic singing of a group of women weaving more of that silver grass cloth. "They aren't hiding," Will mutters, finally holstering his weapon, though his eyes remain alert. "They're just living." They are invited to sit on a terrace overlooking a waterfall that flows upward, defying gravity through some unseen magnetic or thermal pull. A young girl, perhaps 6 years old, approaches them. She carries a wooden bowl filled with fruit that smells of honey and mountain air. She stops in front of Edgar, looking at him with eyes that are unnervingly clear. She offers him the fruit. For a moment, Edgar's face softens. He looks at the child, then at the star metal pedestal visible far above them. "The philosophy is simple, daughter of the word," the elder woman says to Mina. "We do not own the light. We borrow its warmth to grow the garden. To take a piece of the heart is to stop the pulse of the whole." For an hour, there is peace. They eat, they learn. Mina feels the vibrancy of the place, healing the raw exhaustion of the climb. But she can see Edgar's eyes drifting back to the heights. He isn't looking at the village, he's calculating the weight of the treasure. The scene, the desecration of the heart. The sapphire light of the valley is cool and deep. There are no humming wires or glowing grids here, only the soft, natural light of the living stones and the steady, quiet breath of the mountain. The warmth doesn't come from a heater. It feels like the warmth of a hearth that has been burning for 1,000 years. Mina moves through the arches, her feet silent on the worn stone. She doesn't need vibrant sensors to know something is wrong. She can feel it in the air, a tension, like the world is holding its breath. She finds Edgar on the high plaza. He isn't looking at patents anymore. He looks like a man in a trance, his eyes fixed on the heart of the mountain, a stone carved into a pyramid shape that seems to absorb and hold the inner spiritual glow of the villagers. It doesn't glow like a neon sign. It hums with a deep, internal radiance, like a star caught in the heart of quartz. "And I will give thee the treasures of darkness," Edgar whispers, his hand hovering over the stone. His voice is jagged, cutting through the peaceful silence of the plaza. The little girl is there, standing just a few feet away. She doesn't look afraid, she looks confused. To her, the stone is just the heart. It's what keeps the water sweet and the air soft. She sees Edgar's hand, shaking, sweaty and clenched, and she recognizes the noise in him. "It is not for your pocket," the girl says, her voice small but clear in the vast silence. "If you take the heart, you take the breath from our lungs. Why would you want to hold a breath that isn't yours?" Edgar doesn't even look at her. He is looking at the hidden riches. In his mind, he is Cyrus. He is the biblical king. He is the one who was promised. "You don't understand," Edgar says, his fingers finally closing around a shard of the heart that had been loosened by centuries of water. "I am the one who was called by name." With a sharp, violent yank, he snaps the shard free. The silence doesn't break with a scream. It breaks with a sigh. The light in the valley doesn't flicker. It simply begins to fade, like a candle being slowly smothered. The warmth in the air turns to a sudden biting chill. The gloom from the upper caverns begins to pour down the walls like black ink. And from the darkness, the Kage-Tora emerges. It doesn't roar. It moves with a terrifying, heavy grace, its slate-coloured plates grinding together with a sound like a tomb being closed. It doesn't look like a monster anymore. It looks like the physical weight of consequence. The creature stops 10 feet from Edgar. It ignores the shard in his hand. It looks at the little girl, then back at Edgar, its milky eyes wide and judgmental. Mina steps into the dim sapphire light, her heart heavy. She sees the girl reaching out to stop Edgar, her small hand touching his sleeve. "Please," the child whispers. "Put it back. The mountain is getting cold." Edgar shoves the girl aside, his eyes wild. "Get away from me! This is mine! It was promised!" That shove, that act of violence against the innocent, is the final straw. The Kage-Tora doesn't lunge. It simply steps forward, the shadows around it stretching out like long, dark fingers. The moment Edgar's greed snaps the stone, the world doesn't just dim, it dies. The sapphire twilight is snuffed out. The heart in Edgar's hand goes cold and grey. The warmth of Shambhala is replaced by a freezing, oppressive draught that smells of wet stone and ancient dust. It is a darkness so thick it feels physical, like being buried alive. Mina doesn't scream. She hears the small, sharp gasp of the child nearby. In the total void, Mina reaches out, her hand finding the girl's trembling shoulder. She pulls the child against her side, shielding her. "Close your eyes," Mina whispers, her voice a steady anchor in the dark. "Don't try to see. Just listen to me." Mina closes her own eyes. In this bottomless pit black, sight is a liability. It only invites panic. She draws a breath of the freezing air and lets the internal quiet peace of her faith take the lead. She isn't a victim of the dark. She is a traveller through it. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." She moves. She doesn't stumble. She feels the slight incline of the stone, the memory of the path, and a strange, intuitive pull toward where she knows Will is waiting. She isn't walking by sight, but by a vibrant spiritual compass that the darkness cannot touch. Near the arches of the residential tier, Will bolts upright. He's a soldier. He doesn't need light to know the air has turned hostile. He hears the rhythmic footfalls and the low murmur of the word. "Mina!" he calls out, his hand finding his tactical light. "I'm here, Will. Edgar is taking the glowing stone. A child tried to stop him." Mina fumbles for her bag, snapping a fresh glow stick. The neon green flare is violent against the oppressive black. It reveals Mina, pale but resolute, and the small girl huddled beside the doorway. "Where's Saint-Claire?" Will asks, his face hardening as the reality of the betrayal takes hold. "The plaza," Mina says. He broke the silence. They move back toward the heights together, the green glow cutting a small flickering tunnel through the gloom. But, as they reach the edge of the dais, a sound rips through the cavern. It's Edgar. It's not the shout of a king. It's a raw, high-pitched scream of a man who has finally realized that the treasures of darkness come with a keeper. There is a sickening, heavy thud, the sound of slate plates grinding against stone, and then the frantic, fading sound of something heavy being dragged into the abyss. "Edgar!" Will shouts, charging forward with his light. The beam hits the center of the plaza. Edgar is gone. The white stone of the dais is gouged with deep, violent furrows. The iridescent shard of the heart lies abandoned on the floor, its light extinguished. Beside it, a few dark spatters of blood stain the carved stone. The drag marks led straight over the edge of the chasm into the blacker-than-black vacuum. The silence returns, but it's different now. It's heavy. It's the silence of a tomb that has been closed. Will stares into the void, his jaw set. He's gone, Mina. The mountain took him. Mina looks down at the little girl, then back at the spot where the Nebuchadnezzar of their expedition met his judgment. "No, Will," she says softly, her hand resting on the child's head. "He took himself. He just didn't realize the price of the treasure." The green glow of the chemical stick feels small and artificial in the heavy, suffocating gloom. Will stands at the edge of the drag marks, his tactical light probing the void where Edgar vanished, but the darkness simply swallows the beam. There is no hope of pursuit. Mina looks down at the jagged shard of the heart lying on the cold stone. Even in its grey, extinguished state, it feels heavy with the weight of what it represents. "He really thought he was the one," Will says, his voice echoing in the hollow plaza. "He thought the whole world was just a resource waiting for his name to be stamped on it." "He was looking for a kingdom," Mina says, crouching down. She doesn't use her gloves this time. She reaches out with her bare hand and picks up the shard. It feels freezing, like a piece of the mountain's own sorrow. But he forgot that you can't lead a kingdom you're willing to destroy. The little girl watches Mina with wide, solemn eyes. She isn't crying. She is waiting to see if the noise has truly left the plaza. Mina walks to the center of the pedestal. She sees the jagged scar where Edgar snapped the stone away. With a steady hand and a quiet prayer of gratitude for the light that cannot be stolen, she fits the shard back into its place. She doesn't use tools or engineering. She simply holds it there, aligning the grain of the stone with the heart. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happens. The air remains freezing. The darkness remains absolute. Then, a faint, rhythmic pulse begins deep within the dais. It's like a heartbeat returning to a body that had gone cold. A soft sapphire glow bleeds out from the seam where the stone was broken, knitting the shard back to the hole. The light spreads, slowly at first, then in a sudden warm rush, travelling down the white stone channels, through the lilies, and back into the vine-draped arches of the city. The gloom retreats, slinking back into the high crevices of the mountain. The upward-flowing waterfalls catch the light once more, their silver threads resuming their mathematical dance. The Kage-Tora, still lurking at the very edge of the shadows, lets out a low, vibrating hum. Not a growl, but a note of acknowledgement. It turns its massive slate-plated body and vanishes into the jungle, its judgment satisfied for now. The elder woman and the other villagers emerge from the lower tiers. They don't approach with cheers. They approach with a profound, reverent silence. The elder looks at the restored heart, then at Mina and Will. "The balance is restored," the woman says softly, "but the shadow of the man who fell remains in the deep places. He has become a part of the mountain's memory now." "We didn't come here to take," Mina says, standing tall, her vibrant energy now in perfect harmony with the warmth of the room. "We came because we were told there was wisdom here. We've found it." Will steps up beside her, looking at the peaceful faces of the children and the silvergrass weavers. He looks at his tactical gear, his gun, and the high-tech maps that failed them, realizing how little they matter here. "We should go," Will says quietly. "This place doesn't need stakeholders. It needs to be left alone." The elder nods. "The way you came is closed. But the mountain has other breaths. We will show you the path to the lower valleys, where the sun still shines on the snow." As they prepare to leave, Mina looks back one last time at the star metal. She realizes that Edgar got exactly what he quoted. He found the treasures of darkness. But because he didn't have the spirit to handle them, the darkness claimed him in return. She and Will turn their backs on the iridescent glow, following the little girl toward the hidden path out. They are leaving empty-handed, but for the first time in her life, Mina feels truly wealthy. Epilogue: The Shadow's Refusal. The path to the lower valleys is bathed in the soft, honest light of a rising Himalayan sun. The air is crisp, biting, and blessedly normal. Will and Mina are a few hundred yards from the cave's hidden exit, their silhouettes long against the snow, when a sound stops them cold. It isn't the clack-slick of the Kage-Tora. It's the sound of heavy, uneven breathing and the frantic scrape of metal on stone. From the mouth of the darkness, a figure stumbles out. It's Edgar. His expensive gear is shredded, hanging off him in ribbons of Gore-Tex. One side of his face is bruised a deep, sickly purple, and he's limping heavily. But it's his eyes that are wrong. They are bloodshot and wide, darting around as if the gloom is still chasing him. In his right hand, he clutches a tactical folding knife, the blade extended and shaking. You thought you could just leave me," Edgar rasps, his voice a jagged ruin. He slashes the air blindly, a pathetic, violent gesture. "You thought the mountain took me. It'll take more than a glorified house cat to take out a Saint-Claire." He coughs, a wet, hacking sound, and holds up his left hand. Tucked into his palm is a tiny, dull fragment of the stone, not the heart, but a mere splinter he must have scavenged from the floor. It doesn't glow, it's just a cold piece of rock. "I have the proof," he giggles, a high, unstable sound that the wind carries away. "I have the patent. The world is going to know my name." Will steps in front of Mina, his hand resting on his holster, but he doesn't draw. He looks at Edgar with nothing but a heavy, tired pity. "The world already knows your name, Edgar," Will says quietly. "But down here, names don't mean much. Put the knife down. We can get you to a medic." "Medic?" Edgar sneers, his knees buckling. He looks back at the cave mouth, fear flickering in his eyes for a split second before the arrogance masks it again. "I don't need a medic, I'm a king. I'm Cyrus." He tries to take a step toward them, but the vibrancy is gone. He's just a man clinging to a shadow. As he stumbles, he loses his footing on a patch of verglass. He doesn't fall into a chasm this time. He just falls onto the hard, cold reality of the mountain. Mina watches him, her heart heavy with the truth of his self-destruction. She realizes that the Kage-Tora didn't need to kill him. It just had to let him be exactly who he chose to be. "Let's go, Will," Mina says softly, turning her back on the broken man. He's already found his treasure. If you enjoyed part 1 of this story, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for watching.